Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Rosen. I'm the District Attorney of Santa Clara County, a county of 2 million people located in the heart of Silicon Valley. And I'm so excited to have all of us together today to watch this film, Journey to a Better Justice. Now, this is a virtual theater, which means that everyone has a good seat. You know, you're not going to be in the front row and your neck's going to hurt afterwards, or you got a really tall guy in front of you and now you got to switch seats. Everyone's going to have a really good seat. And we're going to get started in just a moment. We have a number of district attorneys from all over California that are joining us, including in alphabetical order, Chesa Boudin from San Francisco, Joyce Dudley from Santa Barbara, Nancy O'Malley from Alameda County, Jeff Reisig from Yolo, Tori Verber Salazar from San Joaquin, Anne Marie Schubert from Sacramento, Summer Stephen from San Diego, Greg Totten from Ventura, and Steve Wagstaff from San Mateo.
Those are
and we also
DAs of each of their counties.
And we also have district attorneys from all over the United States, including Jean Peters Bakers from St. Louis, Sherry Boston from Atlanta, Barbara Lawal from Arizona, Beth McCann from Denver, Spencer Merriweather from North Carolina, Dan Satterberg from Seattle, and Cy Vance from New York. Some of the co-stars in this film are with us, and I want to introduce them. In alphabetical order, Hillary Blount from For the People is here. Also, the president of our Board of Supervisors, Cindy Chavez, John Grudman, we also have John Grubman, who is from Pause for Life, recently released from custody and doing terrifically well. We have Evan Lowe, a wonderful assembly member from Santa Clara County. And of course, we have Karen Sinanu-Towery, a longtime retired prosecutor, now a volunteer attorney for the Northern California Innocence Project. So immediately after the film, it's 30 minutes long, I'll answer as many questions as I can for the next 30 minutes, and the rest of the questions I will answer offline. So the curtain is going up, the lights are dimming. Action.
Today in America, our system of criminal justice is on trial. From asphalt boulevards across America to the hardwood of the NBA and the WNBA to the clay diamonds of Major League Baseball, a groundswell of opposition has emerged against police misconduct, systemic racism, the soaring incarceration rates wrought by the 70s and 80s war on drugs
are menacing our society,
and the over-aggressive prosecutions and sentencing of the three strikes era. Still, the purveyors of the old system, a system that over 60% of the American public say they've grown weary of, continue to strike at the chords of fear. And tough-on-crime district attorneys in most jurisdictions accept the conventional wisdom that higher rates of incarceration lead to lower rates of crime, believing that the more people who are behind bars and the longer they stay there, the safer the public will be.
You have to arrest people and you have to try people, and they have to go to jail for long periods of time. I can't breathe!
But in the birthplace of American technological innovation, California's Silicon Valley, District Attorney Jeff Rosen has been implementing a series of groundbreaking reforms that are proving there is a better way.
We need to have change as a constant state. I think one sense that people have that's not quite true is in order to have low crime, we need to have a lot of people in custody. And that's actually not true. It took me a while to figure that out. It's not like I knew this after I was elected or even knew this when I started in the DA's office.
Starting as a young misdemeanor deputy, Rosen worked his way up the ladder to become the lead prosecutor in the county's highest profile trials. In the hundreds of rape and murder cases he filed, Rosen had a near perfect conviction record. But Rosen also saw an office that too often prized convictions and harsh sentences over the ethical pursuit of truth.
Today, I formally announce my candidacy to be the next district attorney of Santa Clara County.
In 2010, Jeff Rosen ran for district attorney and won, promising to be tough on crime while also vowing an end to prosecutorial misconduct. At the age of 43, Rosen would now lead over 600 attorneys and staff from the county seat in San Jose, serving almost 2 million people in an area covering over 1,300 square miles. As he settled into his new position, Rosen began to recognize that serving the best interests of the community would have to mean more than just headline-grabbing convictions. He began to question the basic fairness of the system he oversaw and to look for more just ways to serve the greater community. Convictions would no longer be enough for Jeff Rosen. In the summer of 2016, that search took him on a fact-finding trip sponsored by a justice reform think tank.
So the trip that I took to Germany with the Vera Institute had a very profound effect on me for a few reasons. So I went with a group of other prosecutors and prison directors and academics and activists, both from the right and the left, that were interested in criminal justice reform and interested in seeing what a different prison system and criminal justice system looked like.
Hollywood producer and prison reform activist Scott Budnick was one of those on the Germany trip with Rosen.
We just saw a system whose values were so differently rooted than ours. The whole system was built around rehabilitation and second chances, but somehow in the United States, we give 25 to life and then add a 25 to life gun enhancement and a 25 to life gang enhancement and think that, like, once we give them 75 to life, then we've got our pound of flesh. But it's not like that anywhere else in the world. And they really think we are barbarians. So to be on that trip alongside Jeff for that experience was profound. And then Jeff left us and went to visit the concentration camps in Poland and in Germany after our trip. And I just think that combined experience led him to really rethink a way that him and his colleagues have been doing business for decades.
So for me, it was a very personal trip because my dad and my dad's family had spent 3 years in Nazi concentration camps during World War II, and my father and grandmother and the rest of my dad's family was liberated from the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. And, I was really confronted by, so here's this place, Germany, which did these terrible things to my people and to my family. And then within 40 or 50 years, they have this really modern, rehabilitative, innovative, compassionate criminal justice system, and it's working.
What is asinine about our current policy is that we sentence someone to many years in prison and require no transformation and don't provide the things that evidence and data and common sense tell us this is how you help somebody. I mean, there's no one I've met in the criminal justice system who wasn't a victim as a child long before they ever victimized anybody.
And so when I saw prisons in Germany that treated the inmates with dignity and respect, they wore their own clothing, they had programs and academic academic classes to help them become better people. I thought this is a society that is demonstrating that it cares about everyone. And I thought, in America, we care about everyone also. And so we need to have a criminal justice system that demonstrates that shows people, the whole community, that we care about everyone. Even if you've committed a crime and broken the law, even if you have to be sent to jail or sent to prison, we still care about you.
By late summer that year, Santa Clara's thermometer on criminal justice reform had reached a boiling point. County sheriff deputies had beaten a mentally ill man to death in his jail cell.
Whether that person lives on the street or is in that jail, that person deserves human dignity, is entitled to be treated like a human being. Earlier today, we charged 3 correctional officers with murder for the beating death of mentally ill inmate Michael Tyree.
And understand what a big deal this is, because law enforcement and the DA, they work hand in hand. They have to. So it is a big deal when a district attorney says, you know what? Law enforcement committed a crime and I'm going to prosecute them.
Well, it was a very dramatic finale to this trial. The 3 correctional deputies all found guilty of second-degree murder.
It's a sad day when law enforcement officers are convicted, when those who are sworn to uphold the law and protect others instead choose to victimize and, in this case, kill a mentally ill inmate.
So what he did was a major statement to the community that we're not going to turn away. We're not going to ignore these kinds of things that happen, and we're going to take a stand and do what we think is right.
America's public enemy number 1 in the United States is drug abuse.
In the 1970s and 80s, our criminal justice system went to war against the recreational drugs of the 60s, and the prison population in America soared. One of the young men of color caught up in that war was Kelvin Jones.
We looked around that bench, man, it was about 10 of us at the bench. And we said, man, you know how many years is at this table right here? And none of us is over 25 years old. It was enough time at that table to take us way back into slavery. He had a year, he had life plus 20. He has 27. He got 32. I think I had 14 or 13. He has 27. He got 17. We started adding it up. We said this stuff would take us all the way back to past 1865 at this point. We said, you know what, man? Did you notice how quick they ran us through that court and gave us all that time for a non-violent crime? We didn't get convicted. We're prisoners of war.
Every human being has value. And the way that some people are still operating in the criminal justice system is essentially throwing people away. They are down on their luck. They have made a mistake. They have unresolved trauma of their own. They lack coping skills or mechanisms so that they can get better. The common adage that I agree with wholeheartedly is that hurt people hurt people. So to just cast people away cuts against the principles that any human being has.
Jensen Ramos was serving 4 life sentences while supervising a prison rehabilitation program that matched inmates with rescue dogs.
We're prepping them to become service dogs for veterans with PTSD. And it takes time, but what it takes is trust. And I knew that it had to start with me. And I started sitting down and just, conversing with guys and just letting them know like how they're doing, letting them know how proud I am of the work that they've done. And for a lot of guys that's meant everything. And for them, because they've never heard it before. For us, for guys who are incarcerated, so many of us have been just kicked when we were down, and when we were being kicked some more. We never were told that we were good enough. And
You know, the reality is, across the United States, we incarcerate millions of people, many of whom are not a risk to public safety, many of whom are languishing behind bars for years longer than necessary to keep our communities safe. By doing that, by over-incarcerating at the scale that this country does, we're actually taking precious public dollars away from violence prevention, away from mental health treatment.
We're seeing more prisons being built than we are universities. The state is spending more on incarceration than we are on educating individuals. Now, the state budget is a reflection of values, and that's not the values of California.
And then I started looking at a little bit the history of incarceration and crime in the United States, and I found something that was very surprising to me, which is that before the drug war in the 1970s and 1980s, we had a low incarceration rate. Crime was a little higher than we wanted, but we had a very low incarceration rate. And so I started to question whether there was really a causation between incarceration and crime.
For Rosen, it was the start of a series of reforms in the DA's office that continues today.
What I realized and what I experimented with in the DA's office was trying programs that diverted more and more people out of the criminal justice system towards drug treatment, towards mental health treatment, and then look to see whether those people came back and committed crimes and wound up in jail and prison.
We've had 24 men commuted by the governor in our program, which is more than any program across the state. And our success rate for graduates of our program is 0% recidivism. Not one person that's gone through Pause for Life program has returned to custody.
Today, Rosen's reforms have become a far-reaching agenda of changes aimed at remaking the system of justice to be more fair, more effective, and more respectful for the entire community.
When I started in the DA's office, I started with a group of 8 other prosecutors, all white men. And today, half of our office are women, half of the managers in our office are women, 40% of our prosecutors are African American, Latino, Asian American, or LGBTQ. And that was a purposeful decision that I made to try to diversify this office to reflect this community. We make better decisions that serve our community in a better and fairer way. And the community feels and sees that we look like them, represent them, and have their best interests in mind.
Prosecutors have a lot of power and a lot of authority. In fact, more than judges, because they get to decide who gets brought into the criminal justice system and how they're brought in.
In the past, we tended to look at charging cases as, what can we charge here? What are all the different crimes that can be charged here? And let's charge that. And now our approach is much different. We're asking the question, what should we charge, not what can we charge?
Jeff is nuanced and balanced, and he knows that there's not one result that fits every bad deed. He wants to look at why something happened. What will the result be if we send someone to probation, if we send someone to school, if we send someone home, if we keep them out of state prison and keep them in local jail? So Jeff recognizes that there is not one solution to crime.
Created a new unit within our office to review all matters of excessive force or other crimes committed by police officers to make sure that we're being fair and we're being consistent and being transparent with the community about what we're doing.
So I think what Jeff is doing and saying, again, sending a message to other prosecutors in the state, if you see this and you believe you can prove beyond a reasonable doubt, it shouldn't matter if the person is in law enforcement or not.
I was at a meeting recently where I made a comment at this meeting, and I said, I want to be able to look at how we're setting bail. Someone from the district attorney's office said to me, well, we're not using bail as the primary decision maker here.
And so getting rid of cash bail and letting a judge decide whether to hold someone in custody before trial, not only are we going to make ourselves safer, because we're going to have the people that are really dangerous in custody, not just poor people, but we're also going to take those hundreds of millions of dollars that poor communities used to pay to bail bondsmen, which are large companies, and instead that money will remain in the community, working for the community.
A devastatingly accurate criticism toward the criminal justice system is how uncoordinated it can be for people who truly need help. Imagine a battered woman, shell-shocked and exhausted, trying to schedule appointments with law enforcement, the local district attorney's office, and social services. Where do I sleep at night? What happens to my kids? How do I get a restraining order? Will I be deported? It's our job to answer those questions, and sending her from office to office is unconscionable treatment for a person we are mandated to help survive and then heal.
We are the Victim Services Unit. We are a program of the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office. We help victims of all violent crimes.
So our county's open 2 family justice centers for domestic violence victims to get help in one location, from a team that includes a police officer, a prosecutor, a victim witness advocate, as well as immigration and family law attorneys.
And it was in that moment where I was like, she gets me. It felt so good to be with somebody that could navigate those notions for me, because I was already navigating so much.
One thing, I was really fortunate when I became DA that I was able to get some additional resources from the Board of Supervisors to have a team of community prosecutors that didn't work in the DA's office, but were actually embedded in the community.
By engaging with the community, what DA Rosen is able to do is improve that accountability. You've got to be in dialogue, you've got to have trust, and you've got to understand.
The community prosecutors have been hugely successful. They're wildly popular in the neighborhoods that they work in.
Going into prisons and actually talking to people and hearing their story and also seeing the work that they're doing, I think is one of the most critical things that an elected leader can do, and it's something that Jeff has been doing as far back as I can remember.
Your life is still meaningful, and I'm gonna do everything possible to keep them from taking it.
So I produced the movie Just Mercy, which is about a hero named Brian Stevenson who has the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Alabama. And Brian has a incredible museum memorial around lynching and confronting our racial past in this country. And it was unbelievable that DA Rosen took his staff there, because that museum and memorial in your face shows you the connection between slavery and mass incarceration, and doesn't pull any punches in showing the racial bias that exists in all of us, but it really exists in the criminal justice system. And so for a prosecuting attorney to take his attorneys who prosecute cases of mostly defendants of color to that museum, for them to understand and evolve their own thinking, was a progressive decision.
Jeff Rosen's impact on criminal justice in California has gone beyond reforming his own department. Rosen has been a leader in statewide initiatives for change.
Yet another high-profile campus sexual assault. A former Stanford swimmer convicted of 3 felonies after attacking an unconscious young woman. But it was his 6-month sentence that provoked national outrage.
So a perpetrator at a college party who chooses to forcibly rape a conscious victim will go to prison. However, a different perpetrator at the same party who chooses to watch and wait for a victim to pass out from intoxication before sexually assaulting her can get probation.
So he went to me at the state legislature to say we need to rectify the law to ensure that we have justice not only here in Santa Clara County, but statewide.
Joined by Assembly members Evan Lowe, Bill Dodd, and Senator Jerry Hill, and a growing number of legislators, we are hoping to change hearts, to change minds, and to change the law to protect the next Emily Doe against the next Brock Turner.
And just this Monday, the California State Assembly passing a bill inspired by Turner's sentence to impose harsher penalties for similar assaults.
The other communities, other states followed suit.
Clara County District Attorney joins me now from Mountain View, California for this exclusive interview. Thank you so much for being with me tonight.
The victim in this case has a name. Her words have been heard worldwide. And because of the conviction in this case, we've had a whole national conversation about sexual assault on college campuses.
He could have easily just said, well, I'm just going to enforce the law and allow the judge to do what the judge will do. But rather he said, I'm going to work within the system and I'm going to work to change the system. That's Jeff Rosen.
Jeff was one of only 2 district attorneys in California to support a pair of statewide criminal justice reform measures to roll back the 3 strikes law and the war on drugs. Both propositions were widely expected to lose at the ballot box.
So we reached out to DA Rosen and asked if he'd take a look at Proposition 47. And what we found was someone who was not only willing to take a look, but really grapple with it, really look at all the issues, the potential pros, the potential cons. What kind of impact is this going to have on the state? And despite the fact that the vast majority of other prosecutors were opposed to this criminal justice reform that would reduce punishment, DA Rosen said, this is actually going to be good for California. It's going to reallocate money to communities from prisons. It's going to take away that felony conviction for low-level crimes. And he endorsed the campaign and joined us on the campaign trail.
California prisons waste billions warehousing people who commit petty, nonviolent crimes.
And what happened?
Well, we won. Yeah.
And he's very much well respected. In fact, that's my opening line, that this is supported by Jeff Rosen. And so it always gets people to think differently, that this is not your traditional sense of tough on crime, that this is reasonable, this is rational, this has empathy, compassion, mercy, and it's well thought out.
In July of 2020, Jeff Rosen announced another step on his journey toward a fairer and more humane justice.
There's simply too much systemic racism and unfairness in our entire society, which is then reflected in our criminal justice system. One cannot ignore it. Therefore, I am announcing today that I will no longer seek the death penalty.
I just hope that what he has done sends a message to other prosecutors in the state that this is the right thing to do, and you can do this and the sky won't fall in. We have a district attorney in Jeff Rosen who got up in front of the public and said, you know, I've always had this view that the death penalty is the right thing to do. And then he has done a 180. He evolved.
We're in the midst of an unprecedented awakening around racial justice and the need for criminal justice reform. We have to have decision makers that see themselves as accountable to what the public wants, see themselves as accountable to listening to demands for change, demands for reform, and then implementing them in a way that real people experience.
So as the nation has come to a reckoning that changes to the criminal justice system can no longer be put off, Jeff Rosen already has a decade of experience in making that change happen.
I've been a believer and an activist for a long time in trying to reduce the footprint of the criminal justice system. I mean, I certainly understand that there's an urgency, but it's also something that I think needs to be done thoughtfully so that it works. And I would just point out, in Santa Clara County, we've cut our jail population by more than half since I've been district attorney. So sometimes there's movements that you hear about where it says, let's cut the incarceration rate by 50%. Well, we've done that in Santa Clara County. We've not only reduced the numbers of people that are incarcerated, but we've kept the crime rate very low.
what I think Jeff Rosen has done and is doing, because I think this is an ongoing process with him, is that I think he is saying to everyone, I get how important it is to be the district attorney of Santa Clara County. And what it means is that I have to be, in every sense of the word, a minister of justice. That means I have to look at everything we do in this system. And if I see that we're not doing it the way it ought to be done so that it works fairly for every single person, then we need to change it.
For Rosen, it all comes down to finding a better way to achieve justice.
A better way to justice is prosecuting people in a way that's fair and treats them equally and with respect. A better way to justice is thinking about rehabilitation more than we think about incarceration. A better way to justice is helping the victims of crime get back on their feet. And a better way of justice is helping the individuals who have committed crimes and served their sentences to become productive members of our society. A better way to justice is not locking someone up and throwing away the key.
Jeff Rosen has taken the lead and shown there is a way forward to a better justice. Treating every person fairly and with respect can make us all safer.
I was born by the river in a little tent, and oh, just like the river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know change is gonna come. Oh, yes, you will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. 'Cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. I go to the movie and I go downtown. Somebody keeps telling me, don't hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will.
I hope everybody enjoyed it. I don't know if y'all can hear me or not.
Okay, I can. Well, you guys have a little wave. Hey, John. Okay. I think everybody can hear us. They are just on mute. Just want to say hi to John Grubman and Cindy Chavez, and Evan just left us. He was with us. So hi, everybody. The way we're going to do this is we got a lot of questions. And they were all really good questions. So nobody is not part of how we're going to answer these questions. However, what I did is Jeff and I rather consolidated the questions, and I'm just going to ask them in order of the most voluminous questions that were asked. So we're going to start at that. So the first question, Jeff, is why did you make this documentary?
So there's many ways to move the dialogue and move the conversation when it comes to criminal justice reform. And there's a lot of ways in which I've tried to educate and inform and persuade the public and other law enforcement leaders. I've written op-eds, I've given speeches, I've done TV commercials, gave a TED talk actually about my trip to Germany, which has more than 2 million views. I can't believe that. So there's many different ways I've tried to move the conversation forward when it comes to criminal justice reform. And a film is another way of doing that. A film that is true and tells a true story is a powerful way to move people toward recognizing our shared humanity and toward criminal justice reform. And so that's why I made this film, to try to reach people at an emotional level as well as an intellectual level, and to move us towards continuing to reform our criminal justice system to make it better and more fair for everyone.
Okay, great. So the second question, it's sort of a same question, two questions in one. It says, how can you improve police community relations amid all the hostility, vitriol, and civil unrest here and across the country? And the second part of that question, which is related, was from a different person, however, is you say facts prove that high incarceration rates have little or no effect on crime. Given the longstanding culture of law enforcement and others, that's kind of a hard sell. Have you had any luck with that?
Sure. So let me take the second part of the question first. The idea that there's not a causation between having a lot of people in jail and then having low crime. And that's something that's a little bit counterintuitive to us in America. It's something that, if you read, there's all kinds of studies out there from the Brennan Institute, from the Vera Institute, that demonstrate that the incredibly high incarceration rates that we have in the United States are actually not contributing meaningfully to lowering crime. And part of how we know that is when we look at the rest of the world, the rest of the first world, Canada, Western Europe, Australia, and we see that all over the Western world, crime was very high, and it peaked in the 80s and the 90s. And then crime began to fall everywhere in the Western world, Canada, Western Europe, Australia, and the United States. But we were the only country that incarcerated 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 times as many of our citizens as any of those other countries. And so it used to be in the United States for the most of the 20th century, first half of it, that we incarcerated about 1 per 1,000 people. And that was consistent with Canada and the rest of the world. But then with the onset of the drug war in the 70s and harsher penalties and punishments in the 80s and 90s, we then dramatically increased our incarceration rate to 5 to 6 to 7 times that. Nobody else in the world did that, and everybody's crime fell in the rest of the world, not only ours. So those things are not connected in the way we might initially think they are. The first part of the question was about how do we strengthen the relationship between law enforcement and the communities that we serve. And I think a good metaphor for this is to think about a bridge. And we try in the district attorney's office to be a bridge between law enforcement and the communities we serve. We do that with community prosecutors who were highlighted in our film. We also do that through the policies and procedures we have to independently investigate police officer wrongdoing and to be objective and transparent in that. You know, when I was first elected DA, we used secret grand juries in our county to decide whether to charge an officer with a crime if the officer shot and killed someone in the line of duty. And everybody is suspicious of what happens behind closed doors. And it was a bad system that led to distrust between the community and also with law enforcement. And so one of the things that I changed and that I worked really hard and collaboratively with police departments and police unions and community stakeholders was to have a system like we have now in our county, where we independently investigate police officer shootings. We send prosecutors and DA investigators to the scene. We lead the investigation, interview the relevant witnesses. If we decide to charge the officer with a crime, we file charges. If we don't, we issue a very detailed and public report explaining what happened, what the law is, and why we're not filing charges. and we release body-worn camera footage that was relevant to our decision. So that and that process that I just described did not happen because I just dictated and announced that this is what we're going to do. I worked collaboratively and closely with police departments and police officer unions and community stakeholders, because I think that real change happens when you sit down and you listen and you respect people, even if they have different views than yours, and you try to appeal to people's higher aspirations and ideals. You know, what Lincoln called our better angels. And that's how you make real and lasting change.
Okay, good stuff. Second question, and we're getting a bunch of questions. I just wanted to let everybody know that we're not going to be able to answer everybody's question. However, if you send questions to info@jeffrosen.org, we can put them together and I can get them to Jeff, so no problem at all. I also want to let everybody know before we go on to the next question that we're going to be putting up the documentary. A lot of people are asking where we can access it. We're going to be putting up the documentary on a bunch of platforms. So we're going to put it on Jeff's website. We're going to put it on a YouTube channel, and we're also going to put it on Jeff's Facebook site. So you'll have access to it there. We encourage everybody to share it on their social media and get it out there as much as humanly possible. Okay, so the next question is, I think I'm going to skip a little bit here because a lot of people ask this question. They want to know about your positions on Prop 20 and Prop 25. And as part of that question, and perhaps Supervisor Chavez can maybe answer a little bit of this, is why is cash bail element of criminal justice reform? You know, why is it important to the community? Cashless bail is what I meant.
Let me let Supervisor Chavez address the Prop 25 cash bail for a moment, and then I'll jump in after her.
Okay, I just need to change your settings real quick. And
thank you.
I add you to the spotlight. There you go.
So first of all, I just wanted to say thanks for letting me join you. And just to be brief about cash bail, I think what we have learned in our community is that cash bail doesn't make us safer. And that focusing on cash bail, what it limits you from looking at is what's the person's real threat to the community versus how do we have a justice system that really works to have people act and behave and be part of our community in the safest way possible. I just want to tell one quick story though about this, if I could, and embarrass Jeff and his staff a little, that we worked on a committee for it seemed like forever. And if you walked into a meeting, you would not have known whether or not you were listening to a public defender or a prosecutor, because they were so focused, Jeff's staff, on giving the facts and being fair and being just and looking for outcomes and looking how to solve problems. And I think that is a real compliment to the leadership of DA Rosen and to the staff that you've assembled, that you couldn't tell who you were talking to. They were all saying the same thing.
That's very kind of you to say, Supervisor Chavez. We try to just talk straight and give you the facts. So in terms of Prop 25, I agree with Supervisor Chavez. I actually helped to write the legislation in California. It was Senate Bill 10 to get rid of cash bail. I helped to write it and lobbied for its passage along with State Senator Hertzberg from Los Angeles. And this proposition that's on the ballot, people need to vote yes in order to get rid of cash bail. And essentially, we want to have a system where a judge asks the question, where we all ask the question, is this person safe to release? If the answer is no, this person is too dangerous to release, then this person should be held in custody pre-trial, regardless of how rich they are. But if the answer, as it is in most cases, is that yes, this person is safe to release, perhaps with conditions like drug testing, an ankle monitor, stay away, or restraining orders, then yes, this person should be released no matter how poor. And so I think that's the system that we need to move towards. And this is not a revolutionary concept or idea. It's essentially how the federal criminal system works in this country and has worked for more than 100 years. So it's something that we can do in our state. In terms of Prop 20, I urge people to vote no on Prop 20. Prop 20 seeks to roll back a lot of the progress that we have made in criminal justice reform through Proposition 47, Proposition 57, as well as realignment. These were big pieces of legislation and initiatives that helped us to reduce the prison population in our state. It's now been reduced by a third, and to do that without crime spiking. And not only have these propositions, 47, 57, and realignment, helped us to reduce the prison population, which, by the way, a federal court had found was unconstitutional because that's how poor the conditions were. These propositions have also reduced racial inequity in the criminal justice system. A disproportionate number of people in jail and prison are African American and Latino. And for instance, Proposition 47 not only significantly reduced the jail and prison population, it addressed racial inequity by significantly and disproportionately benefiting African American and Latino communities. And it also took hundreds of millions of dollars, $350 million in savings from Prop 47. That's what the California Department of Finance has reported. And it took $350 million from the state prison budget, and it redirected that towards services for crime victims like trauma centers, as well as more mental health, drug diversion, and other kinds of rehabilitative services. So Prop 20 is going to lead to more people in jail or prison. It's going to lead to more people having felonies for low-level crimes, which is not something that we want. And the last thing I'll just say about this, the issue of what is a felony and what's a misdemeanor that's important, is my father, who passed away 2 years ago, I asked him once, would your company, he works for a shoe company, would you hire a convicted felon? And he said, oh, no way, we'd never hire a convicted felon. Are you kidding? And I said, well, when I say convicted felon, what do you think? And he said, oh, I think a robber, a rapist, a gangster, a murderer. I said, what about a drug addict? What about somebody who shoplifted a few times? He said, that's a felony? It used to be a felony before Prop 47. Those are now misdemeanor offenses, and they're offenses for which we can hold people appropriately accountable and help them rehabilitate without giving them the scarlet letter of a felony for the rest of their life, which makes it very difficult to get jobs, to get housing, to get education assistance. So I urge people to vote no on Prop 20.
Okay, good stuff. So, so this is a question that a lot of people asked, and it's about how is your staff and how are you dealing, what are some of the challenges to implementing these reforms within your own office?
Well, one thing I know that I've learned is that change is hard. Change is hard for individuals, very hard to change, and change is hard for organizations. And so within the DA's office, for instance, we have more than 600 employees. And when we make changes in policies and practices, right, while it's a hierarchical organization, not everybody changes at the same pace or the same rate. It's sometimes people move a little more quickly, some people a little bit more slowly. And so one of the things that's always a challenge is being in dialogue and conversation with people, to be continuously listening to people, particularly people that disagree with some things that I'd like to do, so that I can understand their perspective and either change course or make the policy that I want to implement that much better because I've heard what the objection is. I mean, a little bit to like, what Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Anthony Scalia would sometimes send each other their opinions before they became final, so that they could each see the arguments of the other and then craft their best arguments. And so I very much believe in listening to people that think differently than I do to try to come up with the best policies. And in the criminal justice system, of course, it's not only the DA's office, and while we're central in that system, and in some sense we're like the quarterback we call the plays, but of course we have police officers and judges and probation officers and correctional officers and parole boards. And so change comes differently to those different organizations. And one of the reasons I made this film was to try to move the whole system, to try to move all the stakeholders in the direction towards a little more rehabilitation, a little more drug treatment, a little more mental health treatment, and a little bit less incarceration. a little more focus on helping crime victims get on their feet, and a little bit less about just locking people up for 25 or 30 years for crimes that where somebody wasn't hurt or killed.
Okay, so another question that's kind of related to that is within your office, what programs are they? Diversion programs? So can you expand those, and if you could get into that? Thank you.
So a diversion program, just to explain what that is a program which holds somebody accountable for a crime or something wrong that they may have done, but holds them accountable either outside of the courtroom or outside of jail. So for instance, we have a diversion program for misdemeanor offenders with little or no criminal record. And we've diverted hundreds and hundreds of people, actually thousands of people every year out of the court system for these very low level offenses where they make restitution to a victim. If there's a victim, they might take classes that are relevant to addiction or to anger management. And we've gotten some incredible results where people with little or no record, if they're given these opportunities, don't come back into the criminal justice system, and we don't see them again. So that's one example. Another example is taking young offenders that are in their early 20s and have committed low-level felonies and diverting them for services into our juvenile hall, which is a much more therapeutic environment. And this came from some state legislation that I supported, where our county became a pilot program for this kind of idea. But it's also something that I saw in Germany, where they segregate offenders by age. So they have youth prisons in Germany for those 25 or under, to try to separate those young people from more hardened criminals. Another kind of diversion program that we have is what we do with narcotics cases now. Essentially, for drug addiction or drug possession cases, we are diverting those individuals directly to drug treatment and not using the court system. Similarly, with individuals that are mentally ill who commit different kinds of low-level crimes, we have mental health courts that address those issues and try to get people the treatment that they need and not just throw them in jail or warehouse them there, which, for many people in America know someone in their family, who suffers from mental illness or mental health problems at some point, right? And the joke is, if you don't know anyone in your family that's suffering from mental health issues, it's you. So, but having somebody in jail or prison for conduct that's driven by a mental health problem is not the right way to handle that. So those are just a few of the programs that we have. There are many more, and we're looking to continue to add those. While we file criminal charges against 30 to 40,000 individuals a year in the DA's office, it's more around 30,000 this year. We've been decreasing that number. There are tens of thousands that we divert out of the criminal justice system through these programs. We're looking to hold people accountable and give them a chance to rehabilitate themselves and become productive members of our society.
Okay, I think this is our last question. It's kind of clever. It says, I was expecting vote for Rosen at the end of that documentary. What is it, Rosen? Or do you have any ambitions beyond the DA's office of Santa Clara County? So the toughest question for last, I suppose.
Okay, well, all right, so I have a lot of ambitions. I want to be a good son. I want to be a good husband. I want to be a good father. But professionally, look, I love being the district attorney of Santa Clara County. This is an amazing community. It's an incredibly diverse place. 40% of the people in our county were not born in the United States. And if you count children of immigrants, it's well more than half the county, people like myself. And I was born and grew up in Los Angeles, and in some sense feel a little bit like an immigrant myself to Santa Clara County and Silicon Valley. And this has been an incredibly welcoming and warm place. And so I'm thrilled to continue to serve as the district attorney for as long as people would like me to do that. I'm very passionate about criminal justice reform, about making the system more fair for everyone, making it better for everybody. And that's something that I've been interested in, not just in our county, but statewide and nationwide. And certainly I've had a lot of conversations with my colleagues, both in California and throughout the nation.
about how to make the system more fair for everyone, how to make it more just. And so, you know, there's an election in November, and depending on the results of the election, there might be opportunities for me to continue to try to improve the criminal justice system at a broader level. We'll just see.
Okay, good stuff. Okay, so I think that's it. We're going to wrap up now. I want to encourage everybody. I'm going to send follow-up emails to everybody to let you know where you can access this. This should be up by the end of the day on Jeff's website. So that's jeffrosen.org. It's very simple. If you have specific questions, you can send it to me. I'm Leo. A lot of you are signed in as me as Leo Briones, but I need you guys. I have plenty of tasks at my home that you can all help with. But anyway, in all seriousness, just I will answer or forward to Jeff info@jeffrosen.org. Send any inquiries there, any questions, and we'll do our best to try to answer them. And we may just put a document together and send them out to you. We're not exactly sure, but we appreciate you being here. Amazingly, more than 60, I just did the math, 65% of the people are still with us that started, and 95% of the people stayed throughout the whole documentary. So wonderful. It was a great project to work on. And thank you, Jeff. And I think we're going to wrap it up. So go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you all very much. I really appreciate you watching this film. Please share it with your friends. And as Leo said, we will put it up on jeffrosen.org and on my Facebook page, DA Jeff Rosen, A Better Justice. This is my journey to a better justice, my journey to criminal justice reform. I know that people that are on this webinar and others have their own journey. And together, we're going to make the system better and more fair for everyone. We are going to have better justice. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.